This is a special presentation of Farm Journal Television.
Today's farmers have high-tech equipment, from tractors to GPS to the hybrids, fighting for every bushel. Here to help is agronomist Ken Ferry.
There's definitely some things that we put into our systems pyramid.
And agronomist Missy Bauer.
So we're trying to create that true V trench.
And they're using the systems approach to higher yields on every acre. I'm Clinton Griffiths, and she's Margie Fisher. Together, we're Corn College TV.
Corn College TV, brought to you by Winfield, uncovering insights through data to help farmers be greater. Visit your local retailer or learn more at winfield.com. And by Micro Essentials, the next generation of fertilizer for the next generation of farming.
Ken, this week we're talking tillage. Pretty important step in the process. How do we get started and decide what kind of tillage we want to do on our farm?
I guess the first step may be deciding whether you need to do tillage. So you may have an environment set up that's in a vertical format, everything's working for you, and there may not be a need for tillage. And then if we threw tillage at that, we might be giving up something that we took years to build. What we first have to do is decide, why are we doing that tillage? Okay,
Right.
so if I'm going after a tillage layer or wheel track, I make sure I get there and I pick a tool that's going to get there. And so the depth of tillage should be predetermined by where you need to be. If I'm trying to fix a disease type situation, then I may be thinking about incorporation of residue. So I'm going to be trying to select tools that do a pretty good job of incorporating residue to buried. If I'm just trying to reset bulk density in a soil, but I want to keep ground cover, then I have to be thinking about what type of tools I would use. I would go down there and pick that soil up and drop it and leave everything in place. So we see a lot of layers out here. This is a good time of year to be looking at layers because we get the maximum amount of roots that we can look at. So this plant now is stopped growing and it's shoving everything to the ear. So what you see is what you get for a root system. You can do a root profile out here, tell you how the roots are responding to your soil. Then set a plant attack up. I need to go after these certain issues. So just picking a tillage tool, somebody will come in and say, well, what should I buy? I say, well, what are you trying to do? And they say, well, we don't know. Then you got to start back with, why are you doing the tillage? Are you getting yourself set up for vertical tillage? Are you getting yourself set up for no-till? Are you taking out wheel tracks? Are you taking out layers? Then you try to select that tool that's going to manage that layer.
Manage that the best. So it's not enough to say, well, we've always done tillage, so let's just keep doing it.
Right.
You've really got to work and look and investigate what's going on in that soil.
And the right tillage at the right time can really boost yields. The wrong tillage at the wrong time can erase a lot of yields. So a situation where thinking about the whole process. And if I'm doing fall tillage, what am I going to do with that field in the spring? Right. How am I going to fit that field and get it ready to plant? If I'm trying to take out a surface layer with fall tillage, but I run horizontal tillage in the spring, I put it back in, I'm kind of in a vicious circle.
Sure, definitely. Thanks, Ken. Still ahead, digging into primary tillage evaluation. But up next, showing how subsurface layers impact early growth.
There are 406 million acres of cropland in the U.S. Winfield is helping to make them work harder. Maybe the answer isn't a new product, but a new way of thinking. A way to turn data into something you can harvest, driving efficiency into every molecule. It's time to rethink what a business partner can be. It's time to be greater. Winfield.
You don't just see a field. You see the future of your operation. One we're helping you protect. Enlist is a new herbicide-tolerant trait system that will build on glyphosate, improving performance to move farming ahead.
Ken, our tillage pass is pretty important to stand an establishment, and no time like the present, early spring, to come back out and see how we did.
Right. You realize that when we talk about soil tillage, it's a big part of the seed bed. We say keep the seed bed sacred. It's going to be a part of how we manage residue, how we manage water moving through the soil profile, and everything from getting this thing planted to early root establishment as far as how the roots go. This particular field we're in today is one of those challenges run into. It is it's been set up in what we call a vertical format. So the grower is trying to eliminate any horizontal tillage that you can, and farm it in a vertical format so the water and the root systems and everything go down. And in this case, we'd always say when we talk about horizontal layers, the shallower they are, the more risky they can be. The deeper they are, the less risk. Okay. So a moldboard plow can put in a layer down 8, 9, 10 inches deep, and that doesn't create any planting issues or stand establishment issues. It may give us problems in August when we're trying to move roots and water up and down. Right. In the stand establishment area, we have to be very careful about shallow layers. So if we come out here and we put in a shallow horizontal layer that can restrict water up and down, that creates a lot of problem for a young corn plant if we have a wet few days, or if we have a very hot, dry situation that we're dealing with. And in this particular field, it was anhydrous supplied in the fall, and then they came back with a vertical till pass in the spring to prep it to plant. But in this case, the vertical till pass was set to move soil sideways. And we have to be careful with that when we're looking at vertical tillage tools and how we set them, how we run them. If they can move soil sideways and we put them too deep in the soil, they can actually shear off a surface layer that can give a young corn plant some trouble. And that's the case here today, is this corn plant was planted right on top of a horizontal layer. So this layer sits right here. We can see where the residue is tucked in, and this plant is on top of that layer. So that's a very shallow horizontal layer that this thing is sitting on, and the root system then is on top of that. So we have a very shallow area. So in this case, we've had some 80-degree March days and early April days, and this thing dried out and got caught. And in this case, when the grower was planting, this seed got set on top of that horizontal layer and got caught in the dry soil and didn't germinate. So it's quite a ways behind other plants that are out here. Now, even if he plants the seed below this shallow horizontal layer, the crown has to develop above it, and that can give a corn plant fits, even if he made it through it.
It's a little older.
It's a little bit bigger plant. He got put through the density layer, and he got into moisture. But the crown establishment is above this layer. So if we look at this plant as it starts to set out, its crown roots are sitting on top of this shallow layer. So you can see the residue got incorporated with it, so the residue's at the horizontal layer, and this root system is caught above that. Now, good growing conditions, adequate moisture, this root system will push on down and we won't have a problem. But if we turn to real hot winds like we got today, we bake the soil out, this thing's going to get caught. If we have herbicide on here and we get rain, the herbicide will move that, the water will move that herbicide down into this layer, and these root systems that are running along on top of that layer will take it up. So if you got atrazine, for instance, in there, you can start to have herbicide damage within a plant because you have a concentrated area of herbicide, and that's where the root system runs. Right. So that shallow horizontal layer can really work against us, and in this particular case we were trying to farm in a vertical format. Now if we did tillage in the fall, loosen the soil up, and we had rough soil out there and we're using our tillage, vertical tillage at a slight angle to move soil sideways, we can get some good leveling, you wouldn't see this. But where we didn't do any tillage and this soil is firm, and now we're coming in here and we're running at a slight angle, we now have to be careful because we can't do much more than just size residue and break a crust. If we get down in the soil and we're shearing it off, we can change the bulk density that this young plant is going to have trouble with.
Corn College TV, brought to you by Avail Phosphorus Fertilizer Enhancer. Supercharge your phosphorus this fall with Avail to maximize the use of your fertilizer investment in the spring.
Supercharge your P with Avail Phosphorus Fertilizer Enhancer. Studies show that when you add Avail to your fall-applied phosphorus, you can see an average increase of 9.9 bushels of corn per acre. Avail reduces phosphorus fixation to promote more efficient P uptake to the crop for stronger roots, better overall plant health, and higher yield. Supercharge your P this fall with Avail Phosphorus Fertilizer Enhancer to maximize the use of your fertilizer investment in the spring. Ask your fertilizer dealer for details today.
It's time to demand more. With Micro Essentials, you get more from every acre. Through our fusion technology, only Micro Essentials combines 4 vital nutrients into one powerful granule, ensuring uniform nutrient distribution and increased nutrient uptake. The innovation behind our fusion technology means you'll grow stronger, healthier plants. Micro Essentials. Get more from every acre.
What we mean by vertical tillage is a tillage system that's going to allow for what we call uniform soil density to allow good root growth. So you can see when we look at these root balls here, it's one that I don't have cleaned off yet, but these roots are all growing down at that natural 35 to 40 degree angle. Very, very good root growth. Why? Because we have uniform soil density under it. So what vertical tillage results in is uniform density. That means we got consistent density from the top of the profile down to the bottom of where we did that tillage at. That will allow for this really good root growth. That's what we're after, what that goal of that vertical tillage actually is.
Okay, and if we look at what isn't good, then
yeah,
you can see it. I mean, it's very blatantly obvious.
This is an example of horizontal tillage. So what we mean by horizontal, it's a tillage tool that's coming in and actually moving soil sideways. So in this example, it happened to be a disc. A field cultivator would look very similar to this as well. But where we've moved soil sideways, and you can see here we ran that disc at about 3 inches deep. When these roots have came down, instead of growing down through that profile like they should, they're being turned and are actually growing out sideways on that density layer. The density layer here, caused by the disc, results in these roots turning and growing sideways. And you can see it in this cleaned up example too, that a lot of these roots are coming out sideways. So we don't have uniform soil density. We have very loose soil in that top 3 inches, and then below that is very firm, in part because we've moved that soil sideways. So when we talk about horizontal tillage, it's tools that move soil sideways like that, versus in the more vertical format, which will allow us for better root growth.
And we see that, and a really good example of it behind us here in the pit that you've dug. Walk us through what we're looking at here.
What we're looking at here is an example where we did vertical tillage. So we had a hybrid chisel ran through here, getting good shatter shank to shank, and then we came and leveled it up with a vertical tillage leveling tool, a harrow type of a tool. But what we see in here are a few things. Number one is really good root growth. So you can see those roots growing down at that 35, 40 degree angle. We see root growth very deep down into the subsoil. So we're down into the sea horizon here. We've got some really nice roots that are coming down through here. What that allows when we get good root growth like that is the ability to actually start moving water up and down through this profile. Okay. So in the spring, as we want to get rid of the water, it can flush down through here. But in July, August, as we got dry like we did this year, it allows us to bring moisture from down deeper in this profile and actually kind of pull it on up through. So as I pick through here, what do I look for in the soil pit is nice, loose soil through here. You can see that it just kind of flakes off. I can see where the roots are coming through here. So one thing we want to watch for is what's the moisture consistency like in this pit. So I got pretty uniform moisture from the top here down to the bottom. Okay. Let's compare or contrast that to what we have over on this other side. Here we do not have a vertical tillage system. And you can see, number one, it looks a lot drier. And if about the same depth I dug that, I'll go ahead and dig a sample out of here and give that to you. And you can really feel and see a difference in there.
How it holds together, and one will ribbon up and the other one is just, it's just dry. It's almost like powder.
That's correct. And I dug those at that same depth. So the reason for that is when we have horizontal tillage in here, we don't get that uniform water movement up and down the profile. So I might have good soil moisture down here real deep, but I have no way of moving it on up here.
Right, right. And it also starts to impact our yield, which is what we're seeing here in these ears that are on these boards.
That's correct. And remember, this is a dry year. So in a dry year, horizontal tillage is going to hurt you a lot worse than if you get an inch of rain every week. But what we can see here is where we have this horizontal tillage, we really hurt the ears. And we've done that because it's a dry year and we don't have enough water to help support what we're trying to do here. Compared to over here in our vertical tillage system, although we've still got small ears in comparison to what we want in a good year as far as moisture goes, you can see just a huge dramatic difference between those two.
Okay, so bottom line is whenever we're getting ready to prepare our fields every year, how do you make that decision on what kind of tools you want?
I think we really want to target, and if we're going to do tillage, we need to make sure we're doing it in a vertical format. Getting that shatter shank to shank, coming in and leveling it off with a vertical tillage leveling tool. And realize that vertical tillage isn't just one tool, it's a system. Okay? And it's a whole systems approach. It starts with your primary tillage and getting good shatter, and it's followed up by a nice leveling pass to get that job done.
Corn College TV is sponsored by the Enlist Weed Control System from Dow AgroSciences, a new herbicide and trait system that will build on glyphosate.
You don't just see a field. You see the future of your operation. One we're helping you protect. Enlist is a new herbicide-tolerant trait system that will build on glyphosate, improving performance to move farming ahead.
There are 406 million acres of cropland in the U.S. Winfield is helping to make them work harder. Maybe the answer isn't a new product, but a new way of thinking. A way to turn data into something you can harvest, driving efficiency into every molecule. It's time to rethink what a business partner can be. It's time to be greater. Winfield.
When evaluating your corn roots, the best thing to do is come out to the field and we're going to start to dig up our root ball. But when we dig up this root ball, we do want to make sure that we do it properly. By properly, I mean that we want to make sure we dig outside of where the gauge wheels of the planter ran. So in this case, our gauge wheels would have ran right in here. So when I go to dig, I want to make sure I'm outside of that. That way I'm not dealing with any issues that I would have had just from the gauge wheels themselves. So I want to go ahead, I want to dig up this root ball nice and wide where I've been outside of those gauge wheels. And you're going to actually want to go quite deep. You want to make sure you get this root ball deep enough that it's down through the depth of where that tillage pass had been run in the field as well. And then as you pop this up, what we want to look for, we want to listen. Sometimes you can actually hear the roots snap off. That'll give us an indication that we have pretty good rooting depth down there. Once we get it dug up, as we pull it up, we want to start to look for, are there any layers or places that this breaks off naturally? So we can see here, as I lifted this up, this broke off very naturally right across there. That's an indication that there's a density layer in this field at that depth. So the next thing we'll do is we'll take these root balls out, we'll go ahead and try to clean them up a little bit and get an idea of what's actually happening with our crown roots. But that's a proper way to do your digging out here outside your gauge wheels and make sure we get it deep enough that we can understand what's happening with the soil density. So as we get our root balls out here to take a look at, as I mentioned in there, we do want to look at the whole root ball with the soil on first to see if we have areas where it broke off naturally like we could see in there. In this example, you can see where it's broke off naturally at the density layer. In this example here, we don't see that. This is out of a vertical tillage scenario versus a horizontal over here. So once we kind of analyze it from that perspective, the next thing we want to do is start to kind of pick through here the soil and just kind of see what's happening, see how loose it comes off. As we have this example here where you can see the roots are coming down through here very, very nicely. So we want to compare that to whether or not they're being turned at that 35 to 40 degree angle. So in this case, they're coming out like they should be. This would be an example of a nice root ball. After that, the next thing I want to do is actually get it cleaned up and get the brace roots chopped off. So we'll take a look at this example here. What I'm going to do is actually chop off these brace roots so I can get a better handle on what's happening with my actual crown roots out here in these examples that we've dug up. So we take a look at the crown roots. Again, we're going to look in here at the base of the plant. We'll use this example that we have here in the base where the actual crown is. Our first three sets of crown roots are what's priority for the yield power of this plant. So that's what we're looking at here are the crown roots, and if they're coming down at this natural 35-40 degree angle, then that's what we're after. So overall, this is how we want to evaluate our corn roots in the field to see what they're doing. We're going to dig up the root ball, make sure we dig it up properly. We're going to look for where it breaks naturally to see if there's any issues with the density layers. Then we're going to gradually start to clean it up to analyze how the roots are coming down through here. But at this point, it's hard to know which sets of crown roots they are. So then that's when we go ahead and clean it up, analyze first, second, third set of crown roots. Are they growing down or are they coming out sideways? So that gives you an idea of what you can do to actually analyze the corn roots in your field.
Up next, answers to your questions regarding proper tillage.
Don't wait to get started on your new farm building. Call today and take advantage of discount pricing during our off-peak construction season sale. Building spots are limited, so contact your local sales office or visit our website.
Hey, what's going on? Just checking the fields. Yours are looking pretty good. Must be doing something right.
Actually, I got a guy.
You got a guy.
Well, it's not just any guy. I got a Channel seedsman.
Channel, yeah?
Yeah, I've been working with him pretty close to get, well, you can see for yourself. This is what I'd recommend. Let's get to work. Now, this is what you want to see.
Maybe I should get a guy.
Maybe you should get a Channel seedsman.
Find your Channel seedsman at channel.com.
Over the generations, fertilizer, the unsung hero of the farm, has been in the background, quietly nourishing crops with very little fanfare. Until now. Meet the next generation of fertilizer, Micro Essentials.
Erosion issues that we run into, and if we need to do tillage to manage a fertility situation or pH or something like that, is how do we keep the crop in place, or how do we hold a sandhill? And that's something we can do with the cover crop. We can see here late in the season, I still got some of this rye cover crop left that's built the mat here. It protects the ground and it anchors this soil so it won't blow away if it was a sand situation, and it won't erode away under rainfall situations. We've got a lot of different options within the cover crop. If we're looking at structure building and maintaining or holding erosion, you're probably going to be looking in the grass family, such as your wheat, your oats, your rye, your barley type situation. If we're looking at a cover crop to manage soil density, let's say hard pans and things like that, now we're talking about deep-rooted crops. That's probably going to bring in your tuber crops, your beets, your radishes, and some of your deep-rooting rye that would go down and try to eliminate compaction. If we're looking at a crop just to suck up nutrients such as nitrogen and phosphorus and hold them for us, then we could be looking again at a rye radish mix. So we could pick up a lot of nitrogen, a lot of nutrients within it, and hold them. If we're looking for a cover crop that's going to bring us mineralizable nitrogen into the next crop, then we might be looking at your crimson clovers, your Austrian peas, things like that, that could actually be legumes that would produce nitrogen that could be released in the growing season.
So we often get the question of how deep should I do my primary tillage? And that answer is, it depends. And what you need to do to determine is actually just go out to the field behind your tillage tool, dig a real small trench just with a hand spade across where the tool is ran, at least a couple of shanks. And then after you did that, just go ahead and start using your hands. And what you want to do with your hands is start digging in here and moving the loose soil out of the way. What I'm looking for is, do I shatter shank to shank or not? So where I've dug this out here, I've got loose soil here, loose soil where the shanks run here, but in between I have a really hard, firm column or block. In this example, my depth was too shallow and I have not shattered in between these shanks. So in this case, what I'd want to do is actually take the tool, maybe try it 2 more inches deep, and go ahead and try it again to see if we could get the shatter from shank to shank or not. But again, all it takes is the shovel and a little digging with your hand. So let's go ahead and put this tool 2 inches deeper and see if we can get it to shatter. So here we've taken the tool, dropped it down a little bit deeper. We've dug our little mini trench with our spade across here. And again, did we run deep enough? It depends on whether or not we have shatter shank to shank. So as I've picked through here, we can see that we've got real loose soil where these actual shanks have ran. In this case, they're every 15 inches. So as we pull that out, and we want to see what the soil is like in between here. In between here, where the shanks have run, we got very loose soil for probably about 4 to 6 inches on the top. So we do have good shatter shank to shank, where we've got nice uniform soil density for at least a good 4 to 6 inches above where we have ran here. You can still see your column, but it's much lower in comparison to what we had in the pit where we ran too shallow. So if we can get this shatter shank to shank, very loose soil in between where these shanks have ran, that's what we're after. In this example, I have run my primary tillage deep.